So there are some people out there that are AI pilled, and they're going from 10x to 100x. If you're already a 10x, they're 100x.
Like, so when they're like, oh, SaaS apocalypse, I'm like, well, it gets pretty close because I didn't have to like go get a SaaS tool to build this.
It's people, I think, have so much FOMO and slash just being left behind. They're gonna pay. So there's this moment of intelligence arbitrage, but I also don't know if how quickly we're gonna close the gap because the model. So the frontier model's capabilities are here, and then you've got high agency people, taking advantage of it here is let's say 50%, not even, right?
So yeah, cut all this out. But every day I can come in here in real time and I click open. You saw how it has to take a second to load, but it pulls all my ClickHouse real-time data.
Oh,
It
snap.
built, it built all this. Like, so when they're like, oh, SaaS apocalypse, I'm like, well, it gets pretty close because I didn't have to like go get a SaaS tool to build this. It's just all sitting in, our databases. And then I talked to my data team last night. I sent a message. I was like, I can't access this. And they're like, oh, here, we'll give you access to, Postgres. Here's the setup. And, gave me the MCP. And so now I can go accomplish what I wanted to do. But how sick is this?
Yeah, dude, that's crazy.
Like all
And
real time.
it's just they just built basically a React app, and are you in the Claude
Yeah.
desktop?
Yeah. So this is just in Claude. So it lives in what's called live artifacts. So I just said, create me a live artifact dashboard that, does this. And,
Yeah.
we iterated for a little bit, like 30, 40 minutes, just getting through like, oh, I don't like this data. I need this. And then it suggested stuff too. So it was like, oh, I'll do signals, like who I believe is in production. I didn't ask it to do this part. Like it just built this signals right here. Right. And it's like, oh, these guys are in production because they, it's like, oh, they're doing volume and sending requests in production. Oh, these guys aren't doing volume. They're just sending requests.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. I don't know. I'm pretty impressed. But where I was going with this is to your point, like when you're like, oh, what are offerings? My neighbor's a dentist. And I was thinking as I was building this, I was like, dude, I think Mark Benioff said it just like a few weeks ago, the headless companies or whatever they want to call it now. You just need, I don't want to be like super simple, but like Google Sheets, like have Claude tap into like Google Sheets or what your database if you have one. But you could build dashboards just like that, just being like, hey, connect to my Google Sheets and show me all my active customers. Or, that's a really
Yeah.
down, access, Microsoft Access way. But I mean, I thought that was pretty clean for 30 minutes of work.
Yeah, dude, that's crazy. Well, let's jump into it because I want to talk a little about like Andrew Karpathy's thing, and I think that would sit on top of it, like the second brain. I don't know if you've heard of this.
No,
Okay, cool, cool. We'll chat about it. Do, 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 do. How's the weather in Hawaii? Good.
today. Is it hot there?
No, but I think it's going to start getting into. It's actually been a really nice May. So we had a cold snap. It got into the 50s this week, which is a trip. And so, but yeah, it's starting to heat back up. The kids really want to get in the pool, so that's what they're excited about. But
Nice.
I can't believe the year is almost over. So our school ends in 2 weeks from today.
Same. Yeah. Ours, West has like 6 more days because they get out that Friday and then like the Thursday is like a water day or whatever. So yeah.
What, is that like our field day? Just play
Yeah.
outside? Okay.
Yeah. Just go outside. They bring in like the bouncy house water versions.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, I don't think we have we don't have the water versions, but we have the same field day. It's just a bunch of blow up stuff and activities, but they get wet, so they have to bring another pair of clothes.
So yeah, school year's over, dude.
All right, well, let's jump into it, man. There's some crazy headlines this week, so I'm just gonna go ahead and read them out, and then we got a couple of good stories we'll get into. But let me be curious to get your thoughts. So, Anthropic takes over xAI's Colossus One, so their entire data center estimated it's $5 billion a year for inference, which is crazy. as XAI, which is part of SpaceX's. And the rumor is Elon's going to dissolve that company, so it's just going to be SpaceX. But they just turned into a neo cloud. It's kind of a trip. So 222,000 GPUs, 300 plus megawatts, effective immediately. So, and then that's when Claude said, okay, well now we're going to double everybody's limits and no like happy hours for the tokens that you have to scale back on. Second up, we got Silicon Valley get serious about services. So this is, I know you've been sending me this all week, but Anthropic and OpenAI. So Anthropic did a joint venture with Blackstone, Goldman, Hellman, Friedman for 1.5 billion. OpenAI did their deployment company, raised 4 billion at a 10 billion pre-money with TPG, Brookfield, Advent, Bain, and it's run by Brad Lightcap, both target last mile deployment, which to me kind of, we'll debate this on the job apocalypse, right? I think their struggle to implement the services and all these layoffs, are they a sign of things to come, or are they just, cutting because it looks good? Only CFO had a great article post on Substack. So I didn't know this. Thoma Bravo handed over Medallia's keys to the lenders. So this is a 5 billion leverage buyout, largest PE-backed software failure to date, 5 billion equity to zero. So they just wiped them out. All those like pension funds and insurance companies. The debt went from 1.8 billion to 2.8 billion, and then they assumed all the equity based on that. I think they're valued at like 6 billion now. So it's pretty crazy. And then there's a really interesting from Lenny with interviewing one of the PMs, I think from Google, Vicus, the 3-pillar AI paywall. So one is to gate usage. So that's where their Plus Pro Ultra plans came. This is for AI solutions. 2 was to gate the outcomes. And for example, there's this new service that they basically charge for like forms that are submitted per hour. I didn't even know about this. Google has this offering. And then lastly was kind of the heaviest compute modalities. And so their Genie 3, which is their real world model, was melting TPUs literally. And so they actually use that to incentivize people to upgrade to the biggest or the latest, the most expensive monthly package to just get access to it. So there's a lot of gates between that. So any of those stand out to you? We got Anthropic with XAI, Silicon Valley Go Services, Thoma Bravo's basically washout of $5 billion in equity for Medallia, and then the 3-pillar paywall.
I mean, all of them are super interesting. I mean, the service that, I mean, I've sent you a bunch on that. I think that's top of mind. I think people are wondering how to participate, or maybe where you can get in if you're not at like a OpenAI or a Claude.
Yeah, I was wondering so there are some people out there that are AI pilled, and they're going from 10x to 100x. If you're already a 10x, they're 100x. And I was talking to some SAs this week and just about the second brain we'll get into later and how they're building that out. And I just wonder if this has to do with, you do have highly intelligent people that are also have a ton of agency, and they're just doing crazy stuff. But I think that some of the gains are going to them. Some of them are going to the company. And it seems like there's this expected long tail within, I would guess, enterprise first, because that's where the biggest TAM is and the most money, because they'll pay for productivity. And then you have SMB, but just focusing on enterprise, there's not enough of these people. They all work at freaking, Silicon Valley companies. And so they need help to bring up the rest of the team to like from a 1x to a 5x to a 10x, even though all these other people are, 100x their productivity with software development. So that's my theory.
Yeah. I'm curious. I mean, you make that analogy. I I wonder though, like engineers, so if you're trying to drive adoption through like SMB or, like the mid-market, I could just be wrong here, but I always think like engineers by nature are just curious and they're builders. So I would feel that like a lot of them would just love to get their hands on or are already doing it like in their own nerd at nighttime, playing with the clouds, So it's like I'm sure the internal champions exist at all these SMBs that want it to like deploy, like, oh, I want to
Yeah.
use this work. So
I don't disagree with you. I'm just wondering, and maybe because you work at more of a startup and I work at a large company, I feel like there's this chasm they have to jump where you have people that have these tools at home that are really, really powerful. And then there's a mix of tools that are available to work. And, but even if you have the tools, if you don't have the connectors, you don't have the, Slack, email, the example you were using with Live Artifact, you have access to Snowflake or Clickstream, was it ClickHouse, data warehouse? Most people don't, right? Everything's siloed for security reasons, for organizational. So it's almost like this combination of, you have the tools, but the tools don't have access to and the ability to interact with the company data securely, or the processes and the change management of how you do the job, someone to teach how the new process should exist. I think that's where they're getting stuck. And that's where it feels like, because to your point, everyone's pretty curious about this and they have powerful consumer tools, but there's just some friction, organizational friction within the enterprise, whether it's access to data, systems, processes, or just the tools themselves or the integrations, I would think is more important. I think that's probably holding a lot of orgs back. And they don't, all they see is Anthropic shipping products week over week and they're having a freak out moment. And so they're like, get these people some services. We'll charge you for this. Cause it's like a front end deployed engineer. Like how much would you think an enterprise company would, if you walked over like, hey, would you like one of our OpenAI or Anthropic engineers to come work with you for 2 weeks? How much you think they would pay? Oh,
Yeah. I mean, yeah, true. I mean, and that's the thing too. Like they've coined that term to your point, like the forward deployed engineers, which is just like pro serve.
yeah. It's people, I think, have so much FOMO and slash just being left behind. They're going to pay. So there's this moment of intelligence arbitrage, but I also don't know if how quickly we're going to close the gap because the model, so the frontier model's capabilities are here, and then you've got high agency people, taking advantage of it here is let's say 50%, not even, right? And then after that, there's a large drop off into, what most people are able to do with it in terms of like the percentage of like this genius brain. If you keep having the frontier move, there's always going to be this massive gap between what the organization can do today versus what the organization could be able to do if everybody was like operating like a finely tuned machine with these frontier models, which is a little terrifying because it creates a lot of pressure and stress in the system because somebody's figured it out. Which humans are not meant for 24/7 cortisol, is my opinion.
100%. Yeah. This is a very interesting time. Yeah. I, and yeah, I just still look at everything and I wonder too, though, like even with like the agency of like setting up these consulting or partners, like there are, I tend to like always revert back to like an SMB, does SMB have an appetite? Like, yes, like the CEO there or like the CFO or CTO might be like, we need to do this because it makes us look different. But I mean, I guess I think everything has the ability to be automated in a sense, but like, is there truly that demand? Like, can I walk into like any SMB and be like, here, we're gonna like AI optimize you with Claude? And what does that mean? Is it just giving them a code, like, Claude Code or?
I think there's just so much more in the harness than the labs want to admit or say. And so I think it's a combination of the harnesses have improved, but then all the processes internally at Anthropic have shifted where, product has figured it out, engineering's figured it out, marketing's figured it out. Because again, we've talked about this multiple times. The bottleneck used to be software. Now software development is not the bottleneck. So it makes everything else the bottleneck. And so they've optimized across all of the teams that are involved in shipping software to get out there, right? They had their developers conference. So I think that's the hard part is even if you get one part of it right, if the other, you just go to the next bottleneck inside of a company. And that's where they struggle because it feels like paper cuts. And then you see somebody to your right, who's breaking the Guinness World Record in speed and you're tripping over your own shoelaces. You're like, what? So yeah, I think that's part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think we could go on and on because I think this is a good topic or subject, but I don't want to eat up too much time because I think there's opportunity there for those thinking about it, which includes us. So I just think there's a lot of opportunity, and the partner, or like even forward deployed, like AI native or whatever they're calling it.
Yeah, 100%. Well, so maybe we'll pivot to the SaaS apocalypse or leverage buyout with, because I was shocked. I didn't know about this. So then I started just going back and forth with Claude, answering my own questions, because I was just, well, like what did they invest, and who were the investors, and who benefited, and who was the winner, who was the loser. And then I said, hey Claude, create me a slide deck on this. So I got 4 or 5 slides just to break this down. All right. So the 2021 takeover price was 6.4 billion. The applied 2026 takeover, so 5 years later, was 2 billion, because they bought it on debt. So discount of 69%, which is insane to me. So typically, so you have private equity and you have private credit. So private credit, is essentially people that collect money. They raise money from insurance funds or pensions, insurance companies, because they want a higher yield on loans, right? 8, 9, 10% plus. And so then they were lending it to private equity firms like Thoma Bravo. And so then they would go take that loan to buy out, a public company to go private. Some retail investors and things of that nature. So kind of what was interesting is how cyclical this is as well, because you have some players on both sides, just with different companies. And a lot of these private equity firms, as you would know, would sell to each other. So they might, they'll exit part of the business, or, KKR will sell to Blackstone, or KKR would sell to Thoma Bravo, or vice versa. So we have some PE sponsors. This is the equity: Thoma Bravo, Vista, Silver Lake, Blackstone, KKR, to name a few. And then on the private credit side, some of these same companies, Blackstone and KKR, but also Apollo, Ares, and Blue Owl. So Blue Owl is the one, or I guess Thoma Bravo in this example, but Blue Owl is the one that's been getting a lot of kind of pressure,
Yeah.
because they've been lending a lot. But I'm wondering if that's that bad given how this turned out. So peak vintage, the enterprise value of the leverage buyout was 6.4 billion. That's 4.6 billion in equity. Debt was 1.8 billion. So that's 28%, right? Sponsors Thoma Bravo. Over the next 5 years, the debt, so basically, I think this was estimated at like 200 million in EBITDA, and the debt was 1.8 billion. And what they were doing is they were just punting on the payments and adding that back to the principal. But then they said, okay, well, the value of the business has also gone up, or they invested more equity. So then you went 5.4 billion. The annual service on this debt was around 300 million per year, which is insane. So basically what happened was they came across like the end of their kind of debt covenants, if you will, right? They had a short-term 5-year loan, and they couldn't make the payments. They couldn't service the new debt. The valuation wasn't there in terms of ratios to raise, the same amount of money, or, do a new loan. And so Thoma Bravo just washed their hands and said, okay, here you go. And the creditors got all the equity, which is insane. So this just blew my mind, because I'm curious, like, how is this a bubble, right? Like, that was my whole thought. It's kind of interesting because there's winners and losers, and the clear losers are the equity investors, which are the pension funds and insurance companies. But then there are other people on the other side, the private equity or private credits, that are inheriting all this equity, assuming this SaaS business will eventually be successful, or could be exited, or go public, or, acquired. So blew my mind.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that is crazy. I don't, but will they, I mean, and I'm curious, like, what those portfolios of SaaS companies look like, though. Like, will they be able to survive? Like, I don't know. I'll call one out right now. I think, like, working on some life insurance, like getting a new policy, and my agent sent me a doc to sign, because I have to send it to my doctor, right? Like the approval for like HIPAA or whatever, for them to release the notice. But they sent it to this company called eNoah, and you would think it would be like an e-signature, like DocuSign. It literally was like, you log in, looked like it was from like early 2000s, and it was like, oh, here's the form that you need to sign. So what we need you to do is download this, hand sign it, take a picture, upload your signature, you take 3 different pictures, your signature, your initials, and the date, and you hand sign it, take a picture of your signature, upload that one, take a picture of your initials, upload that one, take a picture of the date, upload that one, and we will apply it to this document. And I was like, why don't I just sign it and fax it over? Like, so this is a SaaS company, right? Like they're providing a service to my insurance, or this, like, in that like stack of getting insurance. I'm like, how is this even a company?
Healthcare never ceases to amaze me how much it sucks. All the processes, all the software, it just, I don't know. I don't even get into it. But yeah, and people pay for that. And you could totally vibe code, which is probably where you're going, something better over a weekend. You personally, Mr. Doom, right?
Yeah. Or just use DocuSign, like, or, one of the e-signatures that already exists, random versus random, like, yeah, startup. I don't know. Maybe I'm just biased or frustrated through that. But that was an example. Is like, if those are the SaaS products that are in these portfolios, they're all going to die.
Yeah. And you've got just only CFO, he's he's AI pilled, so he's doing crazy stuff with him and his team, but he's also just churning. He's just churning. So he's either saying, no, I don't need those seats, or I don't need those features on those seats, or, we can build it ourselves. We could use a different tool. So at a minimum, unless you're this is a net new customer for the SaaS vendor, he's essentially just trimming the edges of whatever it is. So when you go for your renewal, it's smaller, and he's got all the levers and the data to negotiate that. Be like, well, we don't want to renew. We'll just go with Claude Code Direct, or we'll build our own, or we'll find somebody cheaper who's willing to give us this price. So there's just going to be so much earnings pressure, to your point, on these quote unquote good enough or bad solutions, or not great. And then that just has the negative impact on the top line of the SaaS companies. And so there's going to be more SaaS apocalypse, and then, I don't know, pennies on the dollar, but do you even want the pennies anymore? It's hard to say.
And this is like a side anecdote, like just random comment, but I'm a Bezos fanboy. And there's the API mandate, which basically was like the birth of cloud in a sense too. Was like, that was his thing. It's like, everybody, we need to be able to talk to everybody. We have to have the API mandate, roll that up. And now you have like Mark Benioff, who's like Salesforce Headless, which is basically like MCP APIs, right? Like, so in a sense, Bezos and Amazon were ahead of the time, because to your point of what you just said, like, only CFO is cutting the edges, and he's just like, I just need access to the data, right? Like, I'm going to do this in the way I need to do it, because now I have the ability to do it.
Yeah. They don't want to use your agent. They want their agent to use your API.
Yeah.
It makes sense. Yeah. I do wonder, I always have the big question of how that's going to impact the network effects and the platform. Like, is Salesforce going to get disintermediated, or is you're going to have Salesforce for sellers and leaders, and then you're going to have the headless version for the agents? You have both.
Well, I mean, yes, I think there's both, but like the dashboard that I shared with you, where I tapped into ClickHouse, like I'm still working through the hurdles that with our OA to get our Salesforce MCP set up. But I've, just been like going over just different dashboards I'm going to spin up with live artifacts, right? Like, once that MCP is live with Salesforce, and be like, okay, here, when I open this daily, give me the top, or 10 new leads, opportunities that are older than 15 days, whatever like dashboards you've historically maybe built in like a Salesforce, I can just like, and I can do that on the fly too. Like, as a sales leader, or a GTM leader, you can go in and be like, all right, show me all the leads from, Q4, and which ones had opportunities attached, blah, blah, blah. Like something that, yes, you could do that in Salesforce, but somebody would have to build a report for you, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I just think
Go ahead.
no, I was just saying it's all like that natural language, because now I can just be like, instead of typing that email up asking somebody to help me with those, I can just like that email is Claude, and it spits
Yeah.
it back to me in 10 minutes.
I know, but dude, like, when is it somebody's gonna come and say, like, "Hey, asshole, you just spent $300 in tokens on dashboarding. Here's your fucking Tableau license for $25 a month." Stop it. Like, I don't know how much it is, but I feel like we're in this golden age of token usage because there's so much FOMO. But eventually, some like the budgets are insane. They're blowing these things out, and I especially with anything visual because I've been messing trying to create PowerPoints with Claude and in artifacts they just eat up tokens because they're probably screenshotting and iterating. I don't know. I just wonder if it's either Tableau and Power BI are going out of business or they are going to take the narrative of we're $5. Why are you spending 50? Stop.
Yeah. I mean, but still, if you give me Tableau, and I mean, and you've used it, I've used it. There's, I mean, if they make it easier to use, like, I mean, it's pretty easy to use as is, but still, like, nothing's easier than just like, even you're good. You're a fan of like dictation of just turning it on and talking to it. I still type, but like Tableau's not there, right? Like you can't go into Tableau and be like, show me this dashboard. Like you got to like, oh, click here, join here. Like, all right, I want to use this, pie chart. Like,
I don't disagree. You're 100% right. They are a software firm. Maybe they're going to figure it out and come at that. But it just seems, and I don't know if Anthropic's making money yet, but going back to Jeff Bezos, your margin is my opportunity. So if it's this fat fingered in terms of token usage peanut butter, someone's going to eventually figure out how I can do it better and with more deterministic or tighter rails and give them 80% of what they want. I don't give me I love the flexibility. I love and at the same time, you don't want to be a generalist of everything. You could argue the models are the genius, so you're not the generalist. You're asking an expert, BI person to do it for you. But like, do you really want every person in your company building a dashboard or just one person building a dashboard for everybody in your company? I don't know. Like, do you want everyone to have their own CRM? Like, but everyone has their own desktop and then their files are everywhere. So it's kind of, where's that line? It's kind of interesting mental model to think about.
yeah. I mean, not to go off on like a tangent, but when you said everybody has their own desktop and do you want everybody to have their own CRM? So I know plenty of sellers who, yes, they have to use Salesforce to log their opportunities, log everything, but they also still keep an Excel or a Google sheet of all their customers that they like reference.
So this is one of the ideas for the app is an an iPhone app that essentially allows you to, for B2B sales, for any sale or relationship where you have a lot of economic value tied to it for your personal, income. So realtors, commercial brokers, insurance agents, where you could put in, are they married? What are their kids' names? What sports do they like? And then get automatic reminders and things like that. It just, to your point, makes sense because, you know, that book of business in some respects is going to go with them the next, 20, 30, 40 years. So I just think there's an app opportunity for that. It could be pretty lightweight. And because to your point, like I text with my customers and I have the CPO's number from, a couple of years ago in there. And it's like I'm not going to upload that probably. That feels like a breach of, trust. Let's put it in the CRM so the SDRs can call them on their cell phone at home on a Friday because they didn't realize he was in Eastern. Yeah. So to your point, there's gonna be that line. I 100% agree.
It's interesting times. I mean, it's, but we'll look back on these conversations probably in 6 months and be like, wow, it's not, used to be like, oh, we look back 2 years, but things crazy fast.
It is. So I think it's a good pivot. So we were talking about your live artifacts. So the second brain, have you heard of this? All right. So have you heard of Obsidian?
Yes.
Okay. So why don't you tell the viewers what Obsidian is essentially?
correct? It's like very similar to like a Notion, like a note-taking app.
Exactly.
Okay.
So it's an open source, and have not used it until today. So I'm not trying to be pretentious. I just found out about it. So it's free. You can pay for it to sync, but if you throw it on a Google Drive or a OneDrive or whatever box, pick your poison, it'll sync, right? So that it's not a big deal. So, but everything's essentially in Markdown. And so, you go and you download this, and then it's something called a vault. And then Andrew Karpathy published this kind of LLM Wiki idea. And so I just took this. You can take it away. This is just the raw version of it, but read it. The core idea is essentially like a wiki of your own, meeting notes, interests, web clippings, because Obsidian has a web clipper. You just clip it and save it, and then indexing it, logging it. And so what it does, just if you can think, you're curating all the data that goes into it. Your customer, your web pages, their data sheets, your meetings, who you're talking to internally at your company, who are your prospects, who are your best customers. Are you learning Spanish? You had some articles around, like how you do direct object, possessive, right? Whatever. But you jump all of this into a raw. And so it's in a raw folder in the vault. And then there's maybe a clippings folder, which is kind of raw. And then there's a wiki. And so then you give this prompt via Claude Code or Kiro CLI or whatever you want. You point at the vault and basically it explains the concept. Then what it does is it goes and builds out the Claude MD skill. And then every raw file you have, you curate it. So it's, this is a meeting note. This is what I care about. I'm looking to extract more, AWS security services out of this meeting with a CISO, or trying to build out the network and understand more integration opportunities. And so you iterate through with Claude Code. And then it builds out this wiki. Let me see if I can pull this up. And so Obsidian, so I've got my raw here, I've got wiki stuff. And so they're just markdown files, and they've got different tags. And so Claude Code just put this together, just based on, I threw in some transcripts, I did some web clippings based on our stuff. And then it builds a knowledge graph for you. So it's linking, so I've got build your GTM brain that I sent you. There's a A16Z. You've obviously got Anthropic, SaaS Apocalypse, and how they're all related, and just different links to source that's coming. And so it's just, tree trunk, branch, leaf. And then you can, iterate over it. You add new sources. Some people do this every day for one of their customers. They have a work vault and a personal vault. I just started playing with it, but it seems like a really powerful, and especially in today's world, since you're curating what it's going to think about and interact with, you're kind of imparting part of you on like a fingerprint on what you want to keep and how you want to think about things and what you want to extract from it. But then also, when you jump from work to life to hobbies to kids back to work, project 1, project 7, it's almost like a offloaded long-term memory. Instead of doing a cold start on a Thursday because you haven't, done something for 2 weeks, say, where do we leave these things off, right? We're right here. Why don't you try starting with this? I don't know. It just kind of blew my mind. And so I think Quick Desktop is they're going to have applications building in this context. But what I think is so powerful about this approach is you can build it, and it's almost, you can start 10xing, 20xing, 100xing your personal life in a way that like you can't get outsourced.
Yeah. So taking a step back, and maybe I missed this. So you're dumping all of your data, your thoughts, and like your notes into the vaults. And then are you hooking that up via like MCP to Claude, and you're talking to Claude, or where are you talking to? Okay.
Yeah, so it's the Claude MD's in there, so you can do it however you want. So I usually just talk to it via the CLI. So it's going to pick up the Claude MD. It's probably got memory stored in there too, if you've got a Claude file, so it kind of knows where you last left off. But all the text in there is markdowns, so it almost doesn't matter. It's just point whatever you want at it, and it's going to be able to go through the wiki structure and then answer questions. And so you might say, hey, when was the last time I talked to the CISO? Or give me the 3 common complaints from my customers of the last 36 months. And if you'd stored all that, it'll pull it, and then it'll also come with like whatever knowledge you thought was important. And so I've been pulling things like blog posts, like how they think about they're doing the machine learning and artificial intelligence inside of their product. And so I'm trying to build up like as close of an image without knowing their source code and features, how that shit works. So when I talk to them, I could be like, what are some integration ideas? And then it'll be like, oh, well, based on this, and this, boop. Versus if I go to my SA or my TAM, love them, whoever, right? They're not thinking about it the same way. And instead of it just being a broad web search, and then like, oh, here's some ideas, or even a RAG search where you're just saying, oh, we found all these other email security providers, and so you should propose integrating with a secure email service, right? It's got all of your context, and so it's really thinking like you, and so it's a much more curated data source that's essentially like querying. And so I think you're just going to get responses that are much more in line with what you would want from a collaborator.
It's super interesting. I have to go play around with it now.
Yeah, you should. So I was just so think of that kind of like the brain. It's like live artifacts are the same thing. So now imagine just pointing your live artifacts at that wiki. Hey, based on this, you're building your newsletters. Hey, what's a good idea for a newsletter that I haven't done in the last 6 months? Or what should I, recreate, right? And so I'm going to be putting our transcripts, I'm going to be putting, our research in there and kind of trying to get a feel for it. I don't know if I could do PowerPoints, but I think, the more you put into it, the more powerful it can be. But I also think it's like a moat for us. So it's going to enable you to be productive, but it's also going to protect you in terms of your company's not going to have all that context you are.
Yeah. It makes me think a little bit too, though, on, and this is from like my vantage point, which is different than like where you're sitting using Claude and somebody else, how they use it. So we have like everything like integrated, like the connectors for like all the MCPs, all the like, hey, we have Google Drive, Notion, Slack, all in Claude. And so to your point, like I can go into Claude and you can do this in Slack too with the Slack AI, but I can go into Claude and be like, what are like the top 10 things that were talked about in Slack this week? And it can pull that. And so, but this is like more on the personal level where you might not have, and I think it's good for like individuals who maybe their company isn't like adopting. And this goes back to us what we talked about earlier, like your SMB isn't adopting, AI as fast as you would like it to, but you can do it on your own at home with your, this vaults.
Well, you could also, there's nothing stopping you from leveraging MCP, Claude to pull in your Slack messages. And so you're like, hey, what are the top Slacks, right? And then you're like, most of these suck, but this one is really interesting. And then, or one guy was saying he monitors 10 channels or something. And he says, find me all the posts with more than 80 interactions, like 80 emojis. And then he pulls that and he reads those and says, process that. And so there's other ways to kind of do the heuristics. And then once you find the nuggets, then you put that in raw and then it adds it into like what you care about. Versus if you've ever gone, maybe Claude's just way better at this, but some of our tools, hey, what are my priorities for the week? And it just pulls all of the fucking, calendar invites I have on my week and it just kind of like regurgitates it and it's not useful. So if you had that plus all this context, you could really start to really hone in. It's like, oh, I know Quinn, oh, you've got a meeting with the CPO of XYZ. These are the things you've been thinking about the last 6 months. Here are some of the outage issues, that kind of stuff. So all right, I'll get off my soapbox because I haven't even used it. But
no, I think it also just, even that goes back to just using the Claude or the OpenAI and you reference how that individual is like, oh, he sets the framework that it has, like, look for ones that have 80 comments or 80 emojis, which is good because that's him going like a level deeper, right? And so I think for a lot of these tools, it always goes back to like, you have to have the agency and you have to be able to continue to ask. And what I mean by that is like, to your point, like it can say, oh, well, here's your schedule this week. But if you go in and you're like, okay, I know I have meetings with XYZ. I need to really focus on, what we talked about our last meeting, you're prompting it with better prompts too. Like
Yeah.
it's still, I think, as good as what you get out of it is and we keep going back and forth on these. It's like, it's only as good as the prompter.
Yeah. Yeah. The level of response or quality of response mimics or mirrors the quality of the question and input, which hasn't it always?
Yeah.
Ask better questions, you get better answers. But
Yeah, when people get worried about AI, maybe we need to help our kids be better critical thinkers and ask,
definitely.
you
Yeah.
know, like versus just like, oh, what is the answer here? And then be like, okay, I'm good. Like, get it.
Yeah. Well, so one example we were talking about earlier, what is it? Just setting up Excel with Claude for a small business. This could be one. Say, hey, this is how you create your own version of your second brain. This is how you do it for your employees. So like, this combination of package, and this is what we've noticed. This is how you do it. Here's the things, kind of the easy buttons, and you can expect. So Google, Anthropic, and OpenAI implemented memory, what, a year and a half ago? They've been doing this, right? They've been doing it, but you don't have access to it, so you can't trim it and prune it. Have you ever gone and it reached back in its memory and changed what you wanted based on what you had talked to it about? It's like, oh, and based on this, we think it'd be great, really applicable. You're like, no, no, no. I wanted this to be a fresh start. Like, ignore all of that shit. So this is kind of a way, if you can imagine, to manage your own memory interaction with LLMs, and you have control of the real world data. And I would just say, yeah, I mean, so Salesforce, everybody's going to try to do this. They're going to try to, especially your companies that run the software, they're going to try to pull in these like mini brains of the employees and what they're doing to monitor, improve, and then see where they can cut. Like there's, it's like, well, we understand how this position works and what it has to do. And we've got this memory system. So if we just feed in the transcripts from the calls and the meetings and the Slacks, and then we can get 70% of Quinn. So it's like, so
Yeah. Such interesting times.
it really is. So wish we could end on a better note, but I'm sure there'll be lots of things to talk about next week. Anything you're excited about this weekend? Mother's Day?
Yeah. Mother's Day. There you go.
There you go.
Bingo. Yeah. Same old. We have our club basketball. Like that's pretty much the weekends basketball. And
That'll do it.
yeah.
I still can't believe it's May, man. The
Yeah.
activities this year have been crazy. Scouts have paper air rocket something. So you make a paper rocket that goes on a 1/2 inch PVC, and then you take it to the park, and they have an compressed air gun that pushes it through. So you slide it onto the PVC and see how far it goes, and you have winners. And
Yeah.
so that'll be, I think, 2 or 3 o'clock, and we'll do some Mother's Day stuff, and it'll be good. So chill, hopefully. I'm looking forward to chill.
Yes.
All right, all. Well, thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed it, smash the subscribe, like, give us a comment, and we'll talk to you next week.